Welcome to week 2 of our Building Inner CEO Weekly Challenge. This week we're looking at regulation before response and this idea about authority and how authority is going to lead us in our own inner journey to our own self-values. Because inner authority is not dominance, it's self-governance. And we're gonna explore it right now. So let's get started. And if you've ever felt bullied and pressured to should have or could have do anything when it comes to your growth and change, this week is for you. This week is all about emotional regulation and authority. Authority is not dominance, it's self-governance. The inner CEO does not suppress emotion. The inner CEO regulates emotion. This week, we're learning the difference between feeling something, becoming something, and leading something. Because mastering the inner game means your emotions inform you. They do not control you. Reaction is immediately the automatic. Regulation is intentional and grounded. Emotional intensity is not weakness, but unregulated intensity erodes authority. When we are dysregulated, we give our power to the moment. When we are regulated, we choose our response. Your nervous system is not the enemy, it is the dashboard. Suppression says, don't feel. Self-governance says, feel and lead. The inner CEO feels fully, pauses intentionally, and responds from power instead of pain. Because leadership doesn't begin when everything is calm. It begins when you can stay steady in the middle of the storm. Regulation before reaction, authority from within. And that is how we build our inner CEO. And so when we're not regulated, we find ourselves in these predictable traps. I've actually shared some of these things in the past. So I'll put an article down so that you can kind of see these moments when you're not regulated, you find yourself over-explaining. You're starting to collapse and attack, and you'll start to get actually on the offensive, wanting to score that point before the next team does. Spoiler alert, that team is your partner. You're on the same team. It's why we have the whole couples masterclass and why we own our own side of the street, is that we get the regulation in check. Because there are really deeply triggering moments out there, and our regulation is all over the place. It is not grounded. It is beneath the soil, hidden in all of our past, and all we can access is that past. And so this week, we're bringing it out. We're putting it in our garden. It is time to plant. It's the beauty of spring, my favorite season. The blooms are coming, and so regulation is here. One of my other articles is this idea of being the tar pit, and that our emotions are too much. We're told all the time, like, you're just too much. There's too much emotion here. And the reality is emotions are not the problem. It's not the enemy. It's actually a strength. We need emotions. We've just been implicitly messaged so long that emotions are bad because we don't know how to set boundaries around them. And when we can learn that we are not other people's emotions, let me say it again, we are not other people's emotions. We're not. We can only own our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. And yet that anxious mind, you know, I love my anxious high achievers. In an effort to receive perceived control, we take on other people's emotional states as our own, then we ruminate about all the things of how they're going to be mad at us for their emotional state. And none of it was ours. None of it was ours. So what do? Balance. Well, balance, empowerment, intention. Balance, empowerment, intention. That's what we're trying to do. And our exclusive subscribers will get full access to the worksheet on being able to do that. And if you are not yet a subscriber and you're not ready to invest in change, then learn. Awareness will take you everywhere. You can build a little bit of acceptance, understanding logically I know, emotionally I can't feel, and gratitude's on a spectrum. That's a great article if you're not ready to invest in paid subscriber, to go look at that. So I'll put the link in there so you have something that you can utilize. And then what we're going to find is that we want the emotion. It's good for us. And we want to set boundaries around it, and we want our emotions. We don't want to take on others. And so why dysregulation is so disruptive is because the second that we're emotionally dysregulated, it's temporal lobe. And Emma's done such a great job, and she actually did a beautiful picture of this, a video on what the brain is doing in our Master the Inner Game free course. So definitely check it out. But that temporal lobe, that's where the primitive brain is, and that amygdala. And if you are here, then you are not here. If you're pulling from here, then you are building ruts and brain pulling towards that temporal lobe. You're not pulling it from your neocortex. And that's why we're learning how to ground, and why grounding is so important in mastering the inner game and building your inner CEO. Is because as we ground, then we're saying, oh, I can actually use like a thought process. I could build a response. I don't need to go to my past from like when I was like 4 years old and have my 4-year-old self tell me what to do. When they talk about this inner child, that's what they're saying is that all of that stored stress of your childhood, because you were pulling on and you were hoarding every stress as valuable knowledge. And so it's not necessarily like this little kid who's like, get me out of here. It actually is your past memories not creating full feedback loops, closed feedback loops. And so they're out because they didn't get all the information. And they didn't get all the information, not because someone must pay justice. No, they didn't get the information because developmentally there wasn't an ability to get all the information, because the nuances weren't there, because we were in a stress state. It's just what happens, and that's why we do acceptance. It's just what happens. And once you can let go of that it's not your value, it is not predicting your outcomes, then we just let all of this load off, and we can just be present and let life present. So the difference between suppression and self-governance is this idea that negative dynamic, remember my negative dynamic, and at the end of my negative dynamic, we have shutting down, anger outbursts, and then all of that emotional dysregulation. All three are emotional dysregulation. We're crying and temper tantrum, we're getting really angry, we're suppressing it. And as we're doing that, again, we're in that primitive brain. And so what leadership does, what self-governance does, is it pulls on our inner self-awareness. So as we build a leadership stance, then we get our self-awareness. And what it's doing is getting us a new monologue, a new narrative that lives above the soil. Because when I tell people, what's your narrative? I think we need to ground to a new narrative. What happens is a natural propensity. Nobody is wrong here. In fact, I'm just figuring this out, so sorry. What we're doing is we're pulling from our past stressors and using that language of discipline narrative. And so what we're trying to do is create a garden of new positive flow state narratives. And once we can ground to that, now we can actually start seeing growth instead of just grounding to more of the negative. And that is self-governance. And as we are in this grounded state, we're going to see that we're responding from power, not pain. And for my exclusive paid subscribers, you're going to get all of the activities, the awareness, acceptance, action, so that you can find yourself in the power within, find that leadership presence for you, that regulated state. And we're going to be able to apply it through this week. And I really want all of you to notice that. get curious. Where am I coming from a place of power, and where am I coming from a place of pain? And once we know that, that's a great indicator of, am I below the soil? Am I above the soil? Because nothing good is coming from being beneath the soil. It won't happen. You're in primitive brain 95% of the time. No shame in the game. When I can ground and be present and let life present, then I can really open myself up to trusting myself and others to put out as many processes as possible and allow others to come into my processes and help them create my outcomes or help me fulfill my outcomes. And I can go into other people's processes and help them fulfill their outcomes, because we can't control outcomes, but we can control those processes, and we're going to build a ton this week. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much.